Thank you very much, members, for turning up, and according to the message that you received, we are going to look at the charts as well as the tables. So to insert a chart into a slide like the one we have, we shall go to the Insert tab. From this Insert tab, we shall work with the Illustrations group, whereby we shall click on the chart button. So when you click on this chart button, you will have this Insert Chart dialog box displayed as we can see on our screen. Now from this Insert Chart dialog box, we can see a number of different types of charts that we can insert into the slide that we have in our presentation. We have got the column chart, we have got the line charts or graphs, we have the pie charts, the bar graphs, area, XY, or you can call them scatter, stock, we have surface, donut, bubble, and radar. So all these graphics that we see under this column chart are the subtypes of the column chart, and every subtype that we see here has got a name. For instance, when you point at this one, it tells you it is known as stacked pyramid. Then if you point at that, it will say stacked cylinder. So it is now upon you and me to make the choice from these different graphics or layouts under the column chart. That is if you'd like to work with this column chart. Then we have also the line charts, as we can see. Just like the column charts, even these line charts have got the different names. So these layouts that we see or subtypes that we see, each subtype here has got a name. Then we can also have a look at other types of charts. We have the pie charts. Then you have got the bar graphs that we can as well insert into the slide. We also have the area charts. Then these are the XY charts or the scatter charts, and they also have the different names. We have the stock chart, we have got surface charts, donut, bubble, and then lastly the radar. So all these different types, you can make choice depending on what you would like to do at that given moment. So assuming you want to insert a column chart, you can just use this category area. You click on the column chart, then you will just go and find the first chart or subtype selected. So from here you can make the choice from these different subtypes. If you want to work with this subtype known as the clustered column, then select it. If it is this one, you also select it. So this example, let's work with this first one. So we shall select. After selecting, you go and click on the OK button. Once you click on the OK button, you realize that we have got this Excel file opened automatically. Then on this side we have got the presentation file as well. So within our presentation file we can see a graph, and within this Excel file we can see some contents as well. So this implies that the graph that we have in our presentation file has been created with the help of the contents we see on this Excel file. Secondly, within our presentation file, once this chart is inserted, this chart comes with these three different tabs. So these three different tabs help us to go ahead and work with the chart that we have in our slide. So assuming you would like to modify this chart, so any modification you would like to make to this chart has to be done from this Excel file. Let's assume that we have some marks for our students and the names of our students that we would like to use to come up or create the chart. So we shall edit the information from Excel, and as we are editing from Excel, that information will be reflected from the chart that you have in your PowerPoint file. So let's start to edit some of this information. But before we can start, we can see that in this chart we have some placeholders, which is making our chart not to look nice. So we shall delete the placeholders. To delete these placeholders, I will click on the first placeholder here, then select the whole placeholder. After selecting on my keyboard, I will press on the backspace key. Then that placeholder is removed. Then when it comes to this one, I will also make sure that I click on this placeholder. After, on my keyboard, I will press on the backspace key, and that placeholder will be deleted. Now we have got the chart that we would like to work with. On the chart, we can see category 1, category 2, category 3 and 4. Then this way you can see series 1, series 2 and 3 as they are on this very Excel file. Now where we see series 1, 2, 3, these ones you can now go ahead and edit because they are representing column headings. So you have got the marks and the subjects and the names of the individuals. So where we see series 1, we can decide to click there and start to put the name of the subject so that the values can be reflected under the column headings as we can see. So series 1, we shall say this is mathematics as our first subject. Series 2, now when you click on series 2, there is some information that changes from the graph or the chart that you have in your slide. Previously we had series 1, but when I clicked on this cell which contains series 2, we can see that math has replaced series 1. This means that you have now started modifying the chart that you have inside your slide. So likewise, when we come to this and we change the name of this cell from series 2 to, for instance, English. So to move to this next cell, I can also press on the tab key. So when I press on the tab key, we shall see this series 2 being replaced by the subject name English. So when I press on the tab key, I've moved to this cell, but from our graph we can now see English replacing series 2. Then here now we can say maybe computer. Then we can press on the tab key. But when we press on the tab key, our cursor will come to this cell where we see category 1. Why not to the next cell, E1? The reason is our chart data range stops from this column D. So beyond column D, we are inserting contents, but those contents will not be reflected in our chart. And second, when you press on the tab key, this program will take you back this way, because this blue line that we see defines the chart data range. So when I press on the tab key, you can see that the cursor has gone this way, because the chart data range is defined by this blue line, implying that beyond the blue line, then we are not working on the chart that we have in our slide. So now that is the first step of editing or formatting the chart that you have inserted into your presentation file. Now we have category 1. Where we see category 1, we would like to represent them by the names of individuals or students whose results in math, English, computer are reflected as we can see. So what we shall do is to first of all click in this cell A1 and say all items below this cell 1 are names of the students. So I will say names. Then after I click in category 1 and say the first name of our student is Godfrey. So after typing Godfrey, and when I click now on this next cell below this cell A2, we expect that from our graph where we see category 1, this category 1 should be replaced by Godfrey. So I'll click. So when you look at our graph, we can see that the name Godfrey has replaced the other information we had. So the next individual will be Charles. So the same will apply to category 2. I will click. Then from our graph we shall see Charles. Then here we have another individual. We can say Justin. Then we shall have Rain. So I will click anywhere within this area and we shall have the modification done on our graph. So when you're done with changing, you can now go ahead and close the Excel file. From there you will remain with only the graph in your slide. That's why I said that you will work with the Excel file to help you modify this chart that you have inserted into your slide. So on every bar that we see, this bar represents mathematics, as we can see from the color. Then this one represents English, then this one is for computer. Now, when you point even from that very bar, it will show you that series or this bar is for mathematics. Point, it is under Godfrey. The value where our pointer is 4.3. This value is reflected from the other Excel file. If you point at this one, then it will show you that series, this one is for English under Godfrey, and the value is 2.4. If you come to any this way, it will show you series English point, it is under Rin, and the value of this very bar or series is 2.8. So we are done with modifying our chart. So let's assume we had made a mistake, or we want to go ahead and modify this chart. We use the values that we have, not the values that are provided by Excel, to come up with this chart. But the unfortunate part is that we have already closed the Excel file that allows us to do that kind of editing or modification. So we need to open the Excel file. So to open the Excel file, we shall move our pointer to the Design tab. You click. Now from this Design tab, you'll work with the data group, which is this one. So under this data group, you'll click on Edit Data. When you click on the Edit Data button, you will have your Excel file opened, as we can see from the screen. So that's how you can open this Excel file in case you had closed it accidentally. So from here, we shall now go ahead and modify these values so that our chart is created basing on the values that we have. We shall start with Godfrey. In mathematics, we shall assume that he has 52. So we type 52. Then I will press on the tab key. As I press on the tab key, you also look at the changes that will take place on the chart. So when I press on our tab key, we can see what has happened to our chart. Even the scale changes. So this bar is showing us that it is 52. You can see from the scale. Then all these ones, you can see now they are below or very low down. So these different bars are correct because they are having the values from this Excel file. So they are representing the very values that we have in our Excel file. So under English, we say Godfrey got 60. I press on the tab key and you see the change from our chart. Computer, he got 70. You put 70, I press on the tab key, you will see also the changes. Then we are now on Charles. Charles, in mathematics, he got 40. We put our 40, press on the tab key, as you're seeing the changes from the chart. Then English 50, then computer we can say 60. So we can see all our values are now being reflected on the chart that we have on our slide. Now we go to Justin. We say mathematics 72. You will see the bar under Justin raised up. Then English, we can say 55. You see the bar. Then computer, we can say 67. Press and you'll see also the changes. Then we have now rain. I'm pressing the tab key to go to the next line or row. So we shall say here he had 34. Then we say English 18. Then here computer, we can say 50. Then I will click in any and we shall have all the students we have. They have got the bars, and these bars are representing the different subjects that we have edited from our Excel file. These bars are based on the values that we have in our spreadsheet file. So this bar has been edited or modified from this Excel file, and that is how you can go ahead and work with the chart while you are in this Excel file. Now we are done with editing our chart the way we want. Let's assume we have some other subjects that we have not added onto this chart, but we want those subjects to be added there. So how do we go about that? So to add such subject, what you do is to work with this blue line. So this blue line, like I said, it defines the chart data range. So you will just drag the lower right corner of this range to create space for another column that we shall add another subject. So what we shall do is come at the lower right corner of this range. When the two arrows appear, click, hold. Do not release the mouse button, then move. So as you're moving, you can see some kind of lines drawn. So this one is defining the areas we are adding to our chart data range. So if we want only to add two more other columns, there we can release the mouse button. When we release the mouse button, we shall see two other columns introduced. One is column 1, another is column 2. So where we see column 1 and column 2, they are also reflected on this area. This area is what we call the legend or a key. So this legend helps us to interpret this chart that we have in our slide. So now we can start editing these columns and say maybe we had missed biology, so you say biology. So I'll click below that cell for biology. Then when you look into your graph once again, you will see that biology is reflected on the legend. But when you look under these individuals or look on the bars, you will still find out that the bars are 3 for each individual. This means that though we have some 2 more items on the legend, these items do not contain the values as we can see from the Excel file. So since they do not contain any values in them, we should not expect any bar to be drawn for these different individuals. You only see the bars or the series drawn upon entering some values under these different new columns. So if we go under biology and against Godfrey and we say in biology he got 30, then I click and you go under Godfrey, you will see that there is a new bar that is introduced, and when you look at its color, then you go to the legend, you will see that it is reflecting biology. When you count the number of bars, you will find that there are 1, 2, 3, 4. So they have 4, but for these other individuals there are still 3. Reason? Their cells are still empty. So when we start filling them and we say Charles got a 40, Justin got a 50, as you're seeing on the chart you will be seeing changes. Then Rin got a 60. Then you will see the changes from this chart. So every individual has got now the 4 bars, and each bar is representing a given subject. So you can add other subjects if you want to do so by just clicking there and then typing that more subject you have, for instance agriculture, then from the legend it will be there, and now you can see that you have the chart drawn. You're drawing this chart but from this very Excel file. Now let's assume we have one more student we failed or we forgot to add. How do we do that? Still, like I said, we have still to work with the chart data range. If we just click here and we type information, no information will be reflected on the chart because we are outside the chart data range, which is defined by this blue line. This implies that we have to first of all enlarge on this data range, as we can see from below here. To resize chart data range, drag lower right corner of range. So you just do click. Since you want to add more individual, just drag downwards. If there are 2, continue dragging. If there are many, continue dragging. Assuming you want to add 2, release the mouse button, come just there and add that other person. For instance, you can say Isaac. Press on the tab key. When you look on the graph, you will see the change. Now we are seeing the changes on the names, but we can still now go on our chart, then we try to enlarge on the size of this chart, and we shall have the names fitting there well. So where we see Isaac, we shall now go under mathematics. He got 10, so we type 10, press on the tab key. So when you press on the tab key, you will see the first bar there for mathematics 10. English, we got 20. It will be reflected. Then computer 30. It will be reflected. Then when it came to biology, he got 08. It will be also reflected. So that is how you can add more other individual to this Excel file, and that information is reflected on the chart that you have in your presentation file. So when you're done and you feel everything is okay, close the Excel file and you'll have that chart on your presentation file. Now when you have this chart, like I said, you can now perform a lot of other tasks using the Design tab, Layout tab, Format tab. Let's start with the Design tab. From the Design tab, you can change the layout of the chart that you have on your presentation. By clicking on this arrow, you will have a view of the different layouts that you can decide to apply to the chart that you have in your presentation file. For instance, if you click this, that is how the chart will be displayed on the slide. If that is not what you want, you can still go back and say this is the style I want, click on it, and that is what will happen. I prefer working with this type, so I will click on that, so that I'm in position to view the values that I used or that I worked with to create the chart. So that is this very table that we see. Then besides the chart layout, we have the chart styles. So with the chart styles, there are also many. You can decide to say this is the chart style that I want, so you just come and click on it and it will be applied to the chart that you have in your presentation. If that is not nice, you can still go back and say no, I want this one. Then when you click, you'll see that style there. Then if you feel I don't want to work with the column charts, you can still change this chart type without deleting it. So to change the chart type, you'll move to Change Chart Type button. When you click on it, you'll have this Change Chart Type dialog box, whereby you can decide to switch from the column chart to another chart. For instance, you can say I want pie chart. You click and then you say OK. Then the pie chart will be reflected on your slide. You can still go ahead and work with the chart layout. For instance, you can say this is the layout you want. You click and it will be reflected. There are other layouts that you can decide and say maybe this is what I want, so you click and it will be reflected. If you want to go back to the other chart we had, then you still say Change Chart Type. So I want to maintain my chart type, or I want to just change the chart subtype under the column charts. Then say OK. Then it will be reflected there. So this kind of charts, you can see that it is not so nice looking. The reason is the layout that you have selected. So you can say no, I want to work with this layout, and then you will have the layout there. So that is with the chart layout and how to change the chart type. Then now we have the layout tab. From the layout tab, there are a number of options, as you can see, that we can decide to work with while we are on our chart. First is I would like to work with this chart title. The chart title always appear where we see chart title. Let's assume we don't want this chart title on our chart. That means from the layout tab you will go to chart title and say none, and that title will be removed. But if you want the chart title, go to chart title button and define how you want the chart title to be inserted onto the chart. If you say center overlay title, you click, then that is how it will be inserted. Then if you say no, I want above chart, then this chart title place text box will be exactly above the chart. So the chart will be moved a little bit below and the title will remain alone. So here you can now click in that text box, delete the information and give your chart a name. For instance, you can say students max 2020. After typing, click within your chart and you'll have the name, the title of the chart displayed. Then we have another option, which is the axis titles. So with the axis titles, you are in position to access the horizontal axis and the vertical axis titles. So right now we see that the vertical axis title is rotated title style, which is this one where we see axis title. So to remove, you just say axis, then you go to vertical, then say I don't want any title for the axis. If you want, then you'll go to axis title and say I want this style. If it is rotated, we have already seen how the content or the title will be displayed. If that is not what you like, then you can say I want it in a vertical form, then that is what will happen. Or else you can say that no, I want it in an horizontal way, then it will be displayed like that. From here you can give your axis a name. For instance, you can say these are max. After, click within the chart and you'll have that there. Then we also have, still under axis, you can still modify the horizontal axis and say I want the horizontal axis to be there. So you say title below axis. Right now we don't have. So with the horizontal, you just come and click, then you will see the axis title text box placed just below. From here you just click there and then delete the information and give it an appropriate name. For instance, you can say names, because these are the names. Or you can say students. You just type students. After, click within your chart, you have the horizontal axis title, you have got the vertical axis title. Next we have what we call a legend. A legend is simply a key that helps us to interpret the chart that we have in our slide. So when you click there, you see that right now we don't have that key, but you can decide to show the legend at right, at top, at left, at bottom, at right and at the left, but when they are overlaid. I like putting the legend to the right, so I will click on to the right. then you'll have that key inserted into your chart. You can put the legend to the top and to the left. For instance, it will go there. So that is how you can work with the legend. Then next we have what we call the data labels. With the data labels, here you are in a position to show some values on these bars that we have on our chart. So if you want, then you just come and say show or turn on data labels for selection. Then you will have a view of those values. But because of the layout style that we have, that's why we see our values not organized. We can decide to switch our style and maybe we give it a different one. Let's try this. Then let's go back to the layout and we go to data labels and we say show. So you can see that on every bar there is some value there. So that is the work of the data labels. So if you don't want the data labels, click on data labels and say none. Then they will be removed. Next we have data table. Data table is the other table that we had below this graph or this chart. So if you want that table to be displayed together with the chart, you just go to data table. Right now it is none, that is why we don't have it. So you can say show data table and it will be displayed. Then axis is the same as this. They almost work the same way because when you click there you can see they are also almost the same. Maybe before we can leave this data table, if you don't want, you just go to data table and say none. Then that table will be removed. Then we have one more important option, which is grid lines. You can decide to show the grid lines on the chart you have created or remove those grid lines. For instance, on our chart we have got these lines running horizontally. So this is an example of what we're calling the grid lines. So if we don't want these lines, then we go to grid lines, and since they are running horizontally, then you work with primary horizontal grid lines. Then they will show you that the option selected is major grid line. Then say no, I don't want. Then those lines will be removed from your chart. But if you want, you can say I want them, but I want both. So if you want both major and minor, then you just go and say major and minor. How about minor grid lines? You can see there are very many small lines. So if they are major and minor, then you just say major and minor, and that is what will happen to the chart in your slide. Likewise, that applies to the vertical grid lines. You can say I want the major ones to be drawn. So with the major ones, they will be drawn, and they will separate these bars of each individual from one another. So if you look at Godfrey, you have got these bars and separated by this line. Then Charles separated by that line, and so on. I cannot exhaust every part of the chart, but you can find out what does this do what does the chart flow to when I click on it. If you click on it, what will happen? So you try to find out. Lastly, let's go to the Format tab. So with the Format tab, you can decide to do the shape formatting to the chart that you have in your presentation file. You can work with these fill options, shape outlines, and so on. For instance, if I select our title, I can still say I want our title to have that kind of fill. So it is now upon you to try and see how can I work with these different options. So you can see what they are trying to do. Then when it comes to these word arts, you can select the entire graph. Then you say I want my graph to have that kind of word art. So when you point, you can see the changes on the text we have on our chart. If you go to this, you will see the same changes. So there are a number of them, as we can see from the screen. If that is what you want, click on it and it will be applied to the chart that you have in your slide. I encourage you to try to work with other options that I have not talked about from the Design tab, Layout tab, and the Format tab. That's how we can stop with the charts.